Hello freedom seekers, Jeremy Chambers, Independence Acres Homestead. Out here on the homestead today, on Mother's Day. It's a beautiful day. So what we're working on today is going to be getting these logs that we've already split, got pulled up out of the woods. We're going to get these turned into raised beds. We've got to get these raised beds done because it's time to get the onions into some soil. They are outgrowing their flats in the basement. As much as we love having trees on our property, this tree right over here had to go. It was just like this tree here, and it was coming up, and it was gonna block about 3/4 of this new plot on the garden. And well, as we all know, plants need sunshine to grow. So unfortunately, we did take this one down. We're gonna attempt to leave that one as long as we possibly can. Although it's not a really high quality tree, it still's a tree, and you know, we don't want to take down anything. We try to only use deadfall unless the tree is 100% in the way and going to be detrimental to our homestead goals. So this tree had to go, but it's not going in vain. We're going to be using it for all of the ends of these tree raised beds. And I'm just taking the chainsaw and I'm notching out so that these can mate, and then we're just going to throw a 3-inch deck screw in here just to hold everything together. And then it'll be time to get these filled up. And of course, as always, I got my trusty companions out here. Luke and Josh is, I think, taking a load of sticks over to the burn pile right now. All right, just so everybody knows, I would not normally use my little 14-inch chainsaw to do these rip cuts, but I kind of broke my bar on my large saw, so I don't have that one to be doing my rip cuts. This is not an ideal situation. This chain is not made for ripping, nor is this chainsaw really powered for ripping, but it's what I have, it's what I'm gonna use. So don't rip on me too hard in the comments. I know. That's not the ideal scenario for doing rip cuts on any wood. However, it's what I have. Let's get back to it. So we're going to be using the hugelkultur method in order to fill these beds. They're right about 8 to 10 inches deep. So that first inch or so is going to be some dead wood. We don't want to use green wood in any of this, nothing that we freshly cut, nothing that's not already started to decompose just a little bit. Now the main reason we put wood in the base is to give a place to kind of soak up any excess moisture, and then it will slowly release it back into the bed. Then on top of that layer of wood, we've got some leaves we can throw in there. We've got some of this decomposing mulch that we can throw in there. We're also going to put about 2 to 3 inches of rabbit manure in there before we add any soil. Then we've got some just basic screen topsoil, and then we're going to add a couple, 2 or 3 bags of this bagged raised bed mix on top to just kind of finish it off. And then we have some dried rabbit manure that we're just going to use to top dress a little bit. This is going to sit for a day or two, get our onions hardened off, and then they're going to go into these beds. The boys are going to work on filling up the 2 beds that we have done already, and I'm going to get started on building the 3rd bed. Luke worked really hard to split some of this old rotten firewood that we had sitting over by our other raised beds. It's a mix of maple, oak, some willow, but most of it's just straight up rotten. So he's worked hard to split it. Now he's going to load it in the bed. So Luke's worked hard to get these beds filled with some of this, chopped up firewood. I've got all 3 beds made now. Middle, and this is the end by the garden. We've got the space here right between the beds. Now, this isn't going to go to waste either. This is just going to become a smaller raised bed. We'll use this for flowers, pollinators, whether they're edible flowers like a nasturtium. Maybe even try to find something that's going to companion plant very well with our onions.
You always struggle with the last part. You got to use leverage back here.
All right, we have all 3 of the big beds made. The little beds in between, and the boys are already starting to fill them up with manure, with the rabbit manure. Now, all of these small beds, the 2 small beds that are in between the big beds here, I actually have the wood there about 2 inches up off the ground, and we're putting some green wood in underneath so that it doesn't rot quite as fast. And here's the reason why. It's because this whole area kind of slopes downhill towards these beds. Now, I know you're asking, well, then why would you put the beds there if it slopes downhill? Well, we want to kind of create a natural barrier. The deer have been coming up right along the fence line by the pond, coming up here, jumping this fence and eating all my tomatoes. So we're kind of creating a natural barrier. We're going to be taking the hog panels that we have around the chicken area to put our chicken electric fence up, and we're going to be putting the hog panels up across the backside here, so that eventually if we decide to grow any kind of vining plants over here, we can have a trellis for them to grow up. But the main reason is to create that barrier for the deer. And we're just really trying to keep them out of the garden area as much as possible. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start harvesting them with a nuisance permit. And I really don't want to do that. We do like having the deer around, but I don't like them in the garden. All right, so like I said, I got about a 2-inch gap underneath these two little beds so that water can flow out. So if we have extremely torrential downpours, it's going to flow out rather than actually making a little lake right here in this new garden area. While the boys are working on manure into the beds here, I'm going to be starting to get some wheelbarrows of mulch from our mulch pile over here, and we're going to be making a 2-foot row, a path right in front here. And I'm also going to start laying the mulch down the center of this garden area here so that we can start formulating how these other rows are going to be built up here for the flowers that we're going to be growing in this area. All right, guys, looking good.
Yep.
Good work.
Filled with manure.
All right, so we've got about 4 inches of rabbit manure in each one of these beds. Next step is going to be some topsoil that we had. It's not super good quality, but it's decent. And then from there, we're going to top dress and mix it with some of these bags of raised bed mix, and eventually we'll top dress it with some dry rabbit manure. Head inside and take a break. It's a little warm. Need to get some drinks and some snacks, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll be back at it here in just a little bit. All right, it's time to start filling the beds. We've already got one completely done there in the middle. Boys have got a second load of dirt going in that one, and the 2 little beds, I'm working on getting this one filled. Luke's just spread it out for me a little bit. Looks like 1 load might be enough for that one, Luke. We'll see. All right, let's get this dumped. Oh, nice. Okay, that's good.
Huh?
That's
Pull it up.
we'll get more. Okay, that's good. Let's go dump it in the next one.
That small thing?
Yep, shoot for the middle hole there. Next hole now.
Can't we just shovel it in?
You think it's easier than dumping it?
We actually have.
You can get it. Dump it in there.
There you
All right, go.
Whoop.
And there you have it. Start to finish, some brand new raised beds. These are gonna be great for our onion crops this year. Obviously we're gonna have to amend it with some things like a little bit of bone or blood meal in order to get the nutrition load that we need up in these beds for onions, because they are pretty specific on some of the nutrition that they need, the nutrients they need in soil. So that's gonna be one of the only things that we have left to do. We're gonna let this sit for about a week while we wait for the onions to harden off a little bit before we put them out here, but also just to let the soil have a chance to settle a little bit, see if we need to add any more of this raised bed mix soil to the top here just to top it off. And that's about it. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you following along on this journey. Hopefully you learned a little bit of something about how we make our raised beds. And until next time, God bless.